It's a pleasure and an honor to have Peter Navarro with us. His book is The New Maga Deal. Mr. Producer, let's find it and let's link to it from Amazon.com on all our platforms, please. The New Maga Deal, the Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 Policy Platform. Peter Navarro, first of all, welcome. And then I want to ask you a question.
Always an honor to be with the great one. It's funny, you were actually on television in prison on the weekend, so for whatever reason, your coverage is broad and wide. So even the inmates found your show important.
Wait a minute. So the inmates are watching my show. You know what's interesting about that? Some of them have contacted me over the years. One of them I'm very friendly with, who's a good guy. Isn't that interesting, Peter?
Well, I went to prison over a constitutional issue. First person ever charged with the crime. I'm standing up for executive privilege, constitutional separation of powers. I was like a unicorn in there, but there's a lot of legal issues, I think, and you were in the Justice Department, and, for some reason, they love your show, and I think you were universal, my brother. I just wanted to share that with you.
That's
I see your face there. I go, hey, I know that guy.
Let me ask you this, because the audience, well, tell us, if you can, before we get into your book and so, what was your experience in there?
I went in there and I had immediate street cred for two reasons. First of all, Donald Trump, they love Trump because he passed something called the First Step Act, which is a major piece of prison reform legislation. They hate Biden and the Biden administration because Biden is not enforcing the First Step Act. So there's a natural affinity for Trump folks, but it was kind of funny in a way. The fact that I was in prison for refusing to testify before Congress, there's not exactly moral equivalence there, but the fact that I had the courage to stand up for my convictions and not bend to the government's will. Therefore, I wasn't a snitch in their world, and I was a stand-up guy. But what I wound up doing, Mark, in prison, interestingly enough, is just they can't jail you if your mind and body and heart and spirit is free. And I tried to focus on that. There were a few hours a day. I was a prisoner. I was in lockdown. You had to do counts. They made you do this and that and the other thing. But mostly, I tried to just stay focused on the mission, which is getting Trump elected. And also, when I was in prison, I wound up over the course of 120 days helping many of the inmates with a wide variety of their problems. So it was like being at war, and that was my platoon. Well, they're not my friends. There's bad people that did bad things. There's good people that did bad things. And I came out 120 days later having a much better understanding of the criminal justice system, which is in shambles from just about everything I went through, Mark. I mean, look, my message at the Republican National Convention, I don't know if you saw the speech.
I did.
But it was a simple tagline: if we don't control our government, all three branches of our government, their government will control us. And what I explained to them, I'll explain to your audience, is that it took all three branches of government controlled by Democrats to put me in prison. It was the House of Representatives under Pelosi held me in contempt for honoring privilege and defending constitutional separation of powers. Garland, the Democrat Attorney General, prosecuted me for a crime which the Department of Justice itself said for more than 50 years wasn't. It was my duty to refuse to testify based on separation of powers. And then, Mark, the judge situation in this country, these are politicians in black robes.
They're awful.
I didn't have a prayer, just like Trump didn't have a prayer. I got this guy, Ahmed Maida, just like Juan Marchand in Manhattan, stripped me of every possible defense, threw me to a woke D.C. jury, an inevitable verdict. And look, you know and I know, you watched this happen. They put me in jail before my appeal could get heard. And you know, Mark, I've got a very good chance that the Supreme Court will dismiss my case because I am right on the law. Mm-hmm. And so, I went to prison, so you won't have to. That was a tagline. And what I want people to understand is, like, if they can put me in prison, Bannon in prison, and they try to put Trump in prison, they can come for anybody, Mark. If they control the government.
Isn't it amazing, Peter Navarro, that the Attorney General defied a subpoena, was held in contempt, and won't prosecute himself? So in other words, he makes an exception for not complying with Congress, and the exception is himself.
The hypocrisy, I mean, it's stunning. There was a judge who pointed that out. They said there's a guy sitting in prison, meaning me, and you guys are hiding behind executive privilege. I mean, the reality is that Congress does not have the authority under the Constitution to subpoena and force executive branch officials in the White House, at least. I'm not sure about Robert Hur, but in the White House. And I got prosecuted for a crime that never has been a crime and never will be a crime. It's really important, Mark, for the Supreme Court to take this case. And it's with the appeals court now. I'm just writing that one off because it's 11 Democrats and 4 working Republicans on it. And, it's like that's part of the problem we have in this country, Mark. The Senate confirms these appointments for judges, and they're nothing but politicians in robes. I fear for our justice system. I know you spent a lot of time in the Department of Justice, but this ain't working, Mark.
No, I wrote a book called Men in Black, and it's all about the judiciary. And all about how these are politicians or ideologues in robes, and it's especially so with the Obama and Biden appointees. But also, people need to understand. Let me explain this. The way a person becomes a federal district judge typically is it's a compromise between, let's say, the Reagan administration or the Trump administration and the Democrats. They don't do this on the appellate level or the Supreme Court level, but for trial judges, about 1,000 of these people. And so they'll say, oh, that's a Trump judge. Yeah, Trump nominated that person, but Trump may have nominated that person at the behest of a Democrat senator in New York in order to get 2 others on the court, district court, let's say. They had to say, okay, you take my 2 and I'll take your 1. This kind of horse trading goes on all the time. Yeah. So that's why when people say, I can't believe a Trump judge threw the book at that guy, it's not necessarily a Trump judge. It may have had to be a Trump compromise in order to get 2 other judges. That's not the way it works at the circuit level or the Supreme Court level. Peter, I don't want to forget about the new Maga Deal, the Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 policy platform. You can go to any of my social sites now. We link to it. You can go to Amazon.com directly and get a copy. I would encourage you to do that, please. Peter Navarro, give us the guts of this book.
2 missions here with this book. Number 1, and I think this election needs to be a policy-oriented election, 37 chapters that go soup to nuts that explain 100 actions, Mark, in 100 days. Donald Trump's going to hit the ground running, and it goes on everything from the economy, inflation, border security, national security issues with communist China, all the way down to the social issues that have to do with transgender destruction of women's sports and the indoctrination of our kids in K through 12. But I think the most important contribution of the new Maga Deal, Mark, is to explain in plain terms what the Make America Great Again movement is. If you remember in 22 in the congressional races, right up to today, the Democrats are attacking MAGA as something other than a mainstream movement. And I show in the new MAGA Deal that MAGA is mainstream, Main Street, and America. And I go back with the president to 2016. I was the only one of only 3 people who stayed with him in the White House the whole time. And MAGA basically is 3 simple things. It's a strong manufacturing base achieved through fair trade, tariffs by American. It's a secure border, and it's an end to endless wars. If you remember, Mark, in 2016, among the 17 candidates for president on the Republican side, what distinguished Donald Trump was that iron MAGA triangle. Sure, we support tax cuts, less regulation, all of the traditional Republican values, but what Donald Trump did with MAGA is turn the party of Wall Street into the party of Main Street. Strong manufacturing base, secure borders, and endless wars. So what I'm hoping the new MAGA Deal book will do is allow people to better understand what MAGA stands for and to use the book as a tool to educate the public and defend ourselves against this critique, which we know is coming. The other sides, what do they have? They got Orange Man bad, they got abortion, 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 and MAGA's a four-letter word. That's their campaign. So what the new MAGA Deal book is designed to do is defend ourselves against that. And it's got chapters, importantly, not just from me. Rick Grinnell's got some stuff on national security. Mike Davis on the weaponization of government. Russ Vought, one of my co-guys in the White House, OMB director on the fiscal cliff we're going over. We got Brad Thayer, Jim Fennell on communist China. There's even a chapter on how China is trying to take over the moon. So 37 chapters, 100 actions in 100 days, and a full-throated defense of MAGA, which will help us in an election, which I hope is going to be policy-oriented election. We got to cut through the noise and basically show, as the polling does, that Trump's policies trump everything the White House is doing, sir.
No, it's 100%. How do you like how they're trying to remake Kamala Harris? And she's a radical, isn't she? She is as radical as they come. She ran on Medicare for all, open borders, slash the cops. She funded and promoted an organization that let killers and other criminals out. And so, I mean, she is way out there, isn't she?
She is way out there. But the thing that I love wrapping around her neck like an anchor to make her sink with is, Mark, you remember, your audience knows, the one significant thing that Joe Biden asked her to do in 4 years. There was only one thing. Sent her down in 2021 to do the border. She put her nose up in the air and with her pantsuit on like she loves to do, smelled the stench coming across the Rio Grande River, turned tail, got in Air Force Two, went back to the White House, and 8 million illegal aliens, murderers, rapists, communist Chinese spies, Islamic terrorists, drug cartels, sex traffickers, and an army of illiterate illegal aliens flooding our labor markets, disrupting this country in ways which we're going to feel for a decade unless Donald Trump gets back in and begins those mass deportations. That's on Kamala Harris. And I was actually looking forward to J.D. Vance debating Kamala Harris because if Donald Trump had told J.D. Vance, Mr. Vice President, go down and secure that border, you know damn well that J.D. Vance would have done that, sir, yes, sir, and got it accomplished. And so she's got nothing on her resume other than woke rhetoric, Mark. I mean, she's dangerous. And by the way, in prison, they love Donald Trump. They hate Kamala Harris. She was a DA. All she was known for was putting young, proud black men in prison for selling nickel bags on the streets of Oakland and laughing about it. So she's woke, she's bad, she's wrong, but ultimately we're not running against Kamala Harris. We're running against ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and that corporate media, which, as you said just a few minutes ago, was going to try to create a new narrative and a fiction about who this person is. And it's going to be hard for us to fight back, but thank God for the great one. Shows like yours, you will expose her for the woke person she is.
Well, Peter, you are fantastic. I hope everybody in the audience grabs a copy of the new MAGA Deal, the Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 Policy Platform. It's a brilliant book. And let me ask you a question. There you are, you're sitting in prison, and you got 120 days. That was the sentence and so forth. How did you keep your patriotism when you see what was done to you? How did you keep your patriotism?
Yeah. Well, look, I believe in America. One of my taglines at the Republican National Convention there was, if we don't control our government, the people's government, their government will control us. And what we've got now is a situation, Mark, where the Democrat elites have taken the Democrat Party in a radical direction. A lot of Democrats are disengaged from, disgusted by, or disenfranchised from that party. And I know that this country is the greatest country in the world, but it's our country. It's the people's country, the people's house. We've got to get it back. And frankly, Mark, we've lost it. They controlled all three governments, branches of government, legislative, executive, judicial, and they put me in prison. They put Steve Bannon in prison. They want to put Donald Trump in prison. They want to put school board people who come up before the school board and complain about woke curricula.
Pro-lifers.
Catholics in prison. And that, I'm a patriot. We fight. We're going to get our country back. If we lose this election, Mark, we lose this country. Full stop.
Yeah, and I think that's why you just saw what was the greatest act of anti-democracy of any modern political party by the Democrat Party that just stole the election from its primary voters, and then, rather than having an open convention, they are installing Kamala Harris, which means she will be their nominee without ever receiving a single vote for president, whether in 2016 or this time around. It's remarkable. It's remarkable how they defend this. The same people who've lied to us, who've deceived us, are lying to us and deceiving us again. Peter Navarro, God bless you. Enjoy freedom. Enjoy your life. You shouldn't have had to go through what you went through. It's absolutely appalling. But history will remember you. You see, history will remember you.
I hope history remembers when I win at the Supreme Court and defend executive privilege and the constitutional separation of powers. If I lose that case, Mark, executive privilege is dead, constitutional separation of powers is shredded. I am honored, as always, to be on your show, and I do consider you a great friend, and we've got a fight ahead of us, brother.
Amen, Peter. You take care of yourself, and best to you and your family. I'm sorry you went through all this stuff. Take care of yourself. The book is The New Maga Deal, The Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 Policy Platform. It's easiest. Just go to Amazon.com and order it. Or you can get a copy if you happen to be poking around on the internet, on any of my social sites. You can grab a copy there.